Today's conversation at the Radio Backyard Fence is probably the most practical we've had all year, and we're going to come back to it today on Chris Fabry Live. Why are we going to do that? Because there is a bleary-eyed mom or dad, or both, who haven't had a good night's sleep in weeks. That's because of a really good change in their lives. They've had a baby, a bundle of joy, but that bundle also has a voice and a different schedule than mom or dad. So when I read that Dina Thayer, who will join us from Focus on the Family, is not only a mentor and coach for blended families or those who are about to blend, she's also an infant sleep consultant. I thought, hey, there's a conversation we need to have. And we did back in February, and today you're going to hear the conversation at the Radio Backyard Fence. One of the big conflicts in my own parenting journey involves this very issue. So let's get started first by thanking our team. Ryan McConaughey is doing all things technical. Trish is our producer. Lisa's helping out. Nobody answering your calls today because our program is recorded. I want to thank those who support what we do here each day. We are a listener-supported ministry. So there are listeners around the country who might not have an infant in their home, but they are providing this practical help for you today through their gift. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This month, our thank you is for parents who are struggling with an adult child or adult children. Nobody told you it was going to be this complicated. You know, you thought after you got done with the diapers and the crying and the infant stuff that it was going to be smooth sailing. No, it can be painful when your children become adults. In Resolve Conflict and Find Peace and Hope with Adult Children, Dr. Kathy Cook is going to share biblical wisdom and practical instruction so your relationships can grow and heal. Is that what you need? When your adult child walks away from you or says, hey, mom, dad, don't call me, don't talk to me, I'm cutting you off, what do? What do your adult children need from you? How may you be hurting instead of helping with the things that you're saying or doing? What are you assuming, and what unrealistic expectations might you be having about your adult children? This is an excellent resource. Talk about practical. Go to chrisfabrylive.org. Somebody, if you don't need it, somebody in your life does. Resolve Conflict and Find Peace and Hope with Adult Children by Dr. Kathy Cook. Go to chrisfabrylive.org, or you can call this number, 866-95-FABRY, 866-953-2279, and thanks for your support. Yeah, that's good. That's a great sound in the middle of the day. In the middle of the night, it's not so much. And I want you to hear from Dina Thayer today. Dina's a podcaster, speaker, an author with more than 20 years experience in the marriage and parenting sphere. I don't know, Dina, do you work in a sphere? It's a great big round office. Is that what you?
Right. I'm in a bubble. Exactly.
She originally served as a doula and childbirth educator before moving into parenting or parent coaching and podcasting. Most recently on Focus on the Family's crazy little thing called marriage. For the past decade, Dina and her husband, Scott, have drawn on their step-family experience. They lead blended family ministry through premarital coaching and mentoring and small group facilitation. She and Scott are now empty nesters with 5 young adult children. And we have an article linked at chrisfabrylive.org that Dina wrote and that I highly recommend that you go to if this is your life. Dina, how are you doing today?
I am well, Chris. Thanks so much for having me on to talk about this important issue for parents.
It is important, and I don't know how many in our listening audience are going to be, young enough to have little children, infants. But let me start with this. It says doula, and I went to the Cleveland Clinic and looked it up. Doula is a person who assists you before, during, and shortly after childbirth. Is that true?
That is true. A doula is essentially a labor support person that acts in a non-clinical capacity. So I wasn't listening to fetal heart tones or delivering babies, but I was helping families with maybe breathing or relaxation or different positions they could get into to help their labor go more smoothly. And it's a really special thing to be invited into that day when people become parents. It's really incredible.
Why did you want to become a doula?
I think it really came out of my own birth experience. I felt very, very well supported. And I know that's not the experience of every family. Some families have a harder birth experience, and I had a lovely time. I had a wonderful midwife. I had other people supporting me. And I thought, wow, if I could be part of providing that for someone else, that they can walk away from their birthing day and say that was empowering, that was transformative, I felt loved and supported, then that's really meaningful. And so within 5 months of having my first child, I went through doula certification and attended my first birth.
Wow. What is that like for you on that side?
It's really magical, I have to say. It's pretty incredible. And I think as a believer, it's pretty special for me because I believe children are a gift from God. And we know Psalm 127 talks about children being a heritage from the Lord. And so seeing parents kind of cross over this special bridge from being just a couple to being parents is really, I think it's sacred. And so to get invited into that, plus it's really intense, right? There's a lot of big emotions. There's a lot of big physiological sensations. Some dads are more squeamish than others. So sometimes I was actually a coach for the coach. And it's really incredible. I was really blessed to be part of that and part of that day for many people over, as you mentioned, over 2 decades. So a really special season in my life.
And there's so much information out there these days. I remember reading books, the baby name books, and then expect this in the first month and expect this and all of that. But there's something different about just reading the facts and then actually going through it and having someone who's been there as well coming alongside you, putting an arm around you and say, this is going to pass, it's okay, that kind of thing, right?
That's really true. I think the encouragement piece of being a doula was one of my favorite parts. And the fact that I had children myself, I think lent something to that. I could say to a woman in labor, hey, by what I'm seeing, you're actually almost done. Hang in there. That's really powerful to someone who's feeling like they might want to throw in the towel or wave the white flag of surrender, to be able to say, hey, based on what I'm seeing, you're probably near the finish line. What an encouragement that can be from someone who can genuinely say, I've done this, I've been there, I've been in the trenches of childbirth. And that encouragement piece is a big part of doula work, the advocacy, the encouragement, and the emotional support, not just the physical support.
So you could be a doula at a home birth or in the hospital, right?
That's correct. Yes, I did home birth, freestanding birth centers, and a lot of hospital births as well.
That's one of the questions that people have is like, I would really like to do a home birth, but I'm scared of doing that. We could do a whole program just on that. But I've had you here to talk about the infant and sleeping. And when it says that you are an infant sleep what did I say? Consultant. You're not consulting the infant, right?
No, they generally aren't super responsive to my thoughts. So yes, I work with the parents, and that really came out of the doula work. And I think we see this even in marriage, right? There's so much prep for the wedding, but how are we doing a good job supporting couples in their marriage? And I was starting to feel the same way. I'm helping, which is incredible, and the birthing day is important, but I'm doing all this help and support for that day. But there's so much on the other side of that. And that just started to stir within me a passion for the parenting side of things. And one of the first challenges I would see when I would meet with my doula clients for their postpartum visit is, hey, we are exhausted. And so I did some research and got myself some training around that just to be able to be a support. I really did it mostly in a lay capacity, but then it kind of took off. And it turns out a lot of parents are really desperate for a good night's sleep and willing to make some tweaks and changes in order to get that.
That's what I want to talk about today. When I heard Dina talk about what she just said, it's like, I've not heard this. I've heard a lot of parents say, "Oh, I can't get any sleep. You got the baby," or you make jokes about people. Hey, you getting any sleep? At night when the baby is crying, that they're going through that. So what do you do? And so I've invited Dina. If that is where you are, or you have a question or a comment, maybe a story about how this happened for you a long time ago, because for me, there were a couple of the children that we had who had more problems sleeping than others. Some, it was a breeze. It's just like put them in the crib and they're done, until the morning. But most of the time, especially if you're for the very first time bringing that infant home and you're not getting that sleep that you so desperately need, that's what I want to talk about today. And it's why we're going back to February in this conversation with Dina Thayer, so that you can hear it again or hear it for the very first time at the Radio Backyard Fence. Don't call us today. Our program's recorded, but go to the website, chrisfabrylive.org, chrisfabrylive.org. We're talking with infant sleep consultant Dina Thayer. She's a doula, so it's doula Dina. No, I'm not good. That's what first came to my mind when I was thinking doula Dina. Okay, so go to the website, chrisfabrylive.org. You'll see a link to an article about infant sleep laying the foundation. So, and as I recall, it's been a while, when you bring that infant home, that baby sleeps other than eating and being changed, that baby sleeps a lot. Right, Dina?
A lot of times, yes. In the first few days, they're a great snoozer, and then parents are in for this kind of rude awakening. Now, some babies are stinkers about that from the start, but yes, you often get kind of this almost little honeymoon period where you feel like this baby could sleep through the vacuum or a dog barking right next to them or what have you. And then there's that shift, leaving parents going, oh, well, now what? We thought we had this great sleeper. And I will say some babies really are champs at this, but most babies end up needing some support to kind of learn how to do this well.
By support, you mean training, right?
Yes, the parents kind of taking the lead on helping them learn, for instance, circadian rhythms, just learning day and night. In the womb, there isn't as much of a sense of that. They're floating in fluid. Things are changing all the time, and they're hearing mom's heartbeat and these different whooshing noises, but they're not maybe as aware of dark and light through the skin, and maybe the placenta's in the way. I mean, we have to help them understand the rhythms of life. And I mentioned that scripture in Psalms, and I think this is particularly an important piece for believing parents, because if we do believe that our children are a gift, but we also believe that He's given us this opportunity to steward that gift well, it means we need to not be afraid of being that gentle authority in their world and being their first and best teacher. And one of the first things we teach our children is day and night and how to help them sleep. And so I think what can sometimes trip parents up is even thinking, well, this is mean to, quote, sleep train my baby. And there's a lot of negative connotations with that too, which we can unpack. But I think what we've got to remember is you are the parent. God's put you in that spot, and it's actually a real gift to be your child's first and best teacher about the world. And you do them a disservice if you don't step into that.
The sleep train. We're going to get on the sleep train.
Get on the sleep train.
Doula Dina today. Okay, I saw this video the other day of Michael Jr., the comedian.
Yes.
And in one of his, I don't know if you've seen this, in one of his comedic soirees that he did, he played a video of his newborn, I think it was his daughter. Have you seen this?
I haven't seen the video. I've attended one of his marriage conferences, but I don't think I've seen this video.
He basically said, this is right after the baby has been born, and the baby is just starting to cry and cry and cry, and it's that newborn cry.
Oh, and then does he start talking to her?
And
yes,
and it's
I have
his voice.
Seen this. Yes.
And the baby hears his voice and stops and just, doesn't open her eyes at that point. But it just shows, and I think he made that point later on, whose voice are you listening to, which is really good. But the comfort of that voice of the father and the mother, that's huge, isn't it?
It is. And we now know the science shows us that babies can start to distinguish their parents' voices even in the womb. So that's why we can see a baby that's literally minutes old will try and turn its head toward the sound of its mother's voice or its father's voice. So there is real power in that. And it just shows you how much they're already looking to you to guide the way. And sleep is one area where you can do that. But you're exactly right. The power of mom and dad's voice is not only is it powerful, but it's soothing to them. And that makes me think of another amazing scripture in Zephaniah 3:17. It says that God really is our salvation and he comforts us with his love. And it says, and he rejoices over you with singing. And we know a lot of parents will sing lullabies to their children, and that's soothing and it brings peace. And I love just that picture of how our Heavenly Father does this for us too. So we should want to do it for our kids and not see it as this big speed bump that we just don't want to get over. It's actually really a gift to be able to help your children sleep well, because it also, let's be honest, helps you sleep well too.
Right.
And that's
Yes.
good, because I'll be honest, when I'm sleep deprived, I don't even want to be around myself. I'm not pleasant. So this was partly a necessity for me when I was doing it.
So when you say teach your infant circadian rhythms, how do you do that?
So that teaching babies day and night often comes with some gentle routine. And I'm very aware sleep work in the years that I've done it, I've seen it can be very polarizing. There are a lot of strong feelings on either end of the spectrum. There are families who really feel it's important to have baby on maybe a quite rigid schedule, and there's other families who truly doing their best really believe in this more free form approach. And I kind of just want to feed my baby when they cry and do a lot of baby wearing, in a sling or something like that. And neither are good or bad. I think we have to be careful to kind of polarize or say there's one right way. You mentioned earlier books, and that's one area where I think it can get really sticky, because you could read 3 books on sleep, for example, and come away with 3 completely different philosophies on how to do it. So it is important to teach night and day, but what is going to resonate for how to teach that might be a little different from one family to another. So I'll share what I kind of talk about with my clients. I learn about them and learn about their parenting styles and what they're like as people. And what I really encourage parents is, I usually say, I don't so much care what you pick, but I do encourage you to choose some kind of framework, whether that is, hey, it resonates with us to have a schedule, or we're going to be a little more on the attachment parenting freeform side, or we're going to be somewhere in the middle. But to choose a framework and to have a strong why for this hard work of helping your baby sleep makes such a difference. And I find it's the step most parents skip. They haven't really thought about the intentionality of it and the why. And when the what and the how get hard, your why is what helps you. There's that saying that says, if you have a strong enough why, you can tolerate almost any how. And I think, especially in sleep work, nothing could be more true. You've got to have a reason that you're doing it. There's even families who will do a combo pack. You've had 9 kids, so you've probably seen a lot of variety pack on not only the skill level of your child to sleep, but even how you and your wife approached it over the years. And so I encourage families, think about why, pick some kind of framework to use, and operate out of that. It will help you a ton when things get challenging. And I did say when, not if.
Now here's why I know that I wanted to have you on about this, Dina. And I didn't know a whole lot other than reading the article, because there are people who are very rigid and will say, you have to do this, and here's what you do, and there's a minute and a half of that, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, I don't know that I want to foster that, but I just sensed with you that you would be sensitive to the infant as well as the parents, and not give a rigid, 1, 2, 3, ABC. This is how you have to do it.
That you were correct in that sense. Babies are not machines or robots. They're all individual people, and they all respond a little bit differently to the things that we try. I've even had clients who came back with their second baby and said, wow, this one just isn't responding to the things that seemed to work really well with our firstborn. Could we touch base again about some different strategies? And I'm always happy to do that, because they are people. and they're going to respond differently. And parents even change. We all know if we've been married for any length of time, the dynamic of your marriage changes over time as you learn and grow. We need to be considerate of our babies learning and growing. They are people, and babies are a wonderful way to start people. Don't get me wrong, they're fun. But we do need to understand that what works for one family maybe isn't the perfect answer for another. And some of that even comes down to your style as a person. Like I'm a real morning person, for example, and I'm a firstborn, so I love structure. So bringing some routine into my baby's day made a lot of sense for me. For another family who loves to have the days where they just wake up and spontaneously want to go on a hike, a schedule might feel really too restrictive for them. And they need a baby that can just go with the flow with whatever ends up happening in their day. And that's why that intention piece becomes so important. You've got to understand, what are we like as people? What are we like as parents? What is our lifestyle? And how do we work our baby into that? Because that's the other thing I think we're seeing a lot in our society. It's a lot of this kind of child-centered parenting. And what we know, particularly as Christians, is that children are a welcome addition to our life, but they were never designed to be the center of our universe. We need to steward this gift by being their authority in that gentle and loving way, but certainly still being that authority. And so picking based on what are we like? What is our life like? What's going to work for us? That incorporates your baby into your microcosm of an environment as a family system. And that's, again, a gift you give your child to not set them up to be really upset when they go out in the world someday and go, what? I'm not the center of the universe? What happened here? So this is a foundational piece of that, actually, even in how you parent.
The other struggle for new moms and dads is you're really vulnerable. If you read all the books, you heard the conflicting advice, and then you have a parent or a brother or sister who has more children, down the road a little further. Oh, you shouldn't do that. You ought to do this, and why don't you try that? And you can feel kind of ganged up on with all of that advice that's coming in.
Yes, and that's really demoralizing too. I think underneath all of that, parenting is actually pretty vulnerable. We're putting ourselves out there through these little people. And so when we receive a discouraging comment like that, that's pretty demoralizing and can even make a parent feel like I'm doing a bad job. I've had some clients come to me feeling very defeated. I must be doing this, quote, wrong, unquote, or I had an unfortunate comment from an in-law or something that's just driven me to kind of question how I'm going about this. And so I appreciate you bringing up that point, because I actually think other loved ones, such as the grandparents, aunts and uncles, anyone who maybe serves as childcare, need to be supportive of how the parents have decided to do it. Not only is that kind to the parents and doesn't cut them down, as you were just describing, but it also provides beautiful consistency for the baby. So they aren't experiencing one set of how we do things with mom and dad, and then something different at daycare and something different when I'm with grandma, etc. We want to provide consistency for them so that they can learn, again, not only day and night, but just kind of learn the rhythms of their own household.
So how old does the infant need to be when you start implementing this framework you're talking about?
Oh, I'm glad you asked this, because this is a myth that I really enjoy busting. I think a lot of parents, whether they've read a book or just heard it somewhere, they think it can be kind of harmful to start too soon, so to speak. They kind of falsely believe that if there's any kind of a sleep plan or structure, we're going to have terrible issues. What I will say is, in all the years of my sleep work, I have seen that to rarely be the case. I actually have seen the opposite more often, where parents kind of wait too long to make a strategy or pick a plan, and then they really end up in some ruts. And those tough habits are much harder to undo the older the baby is. So I really encourage, yes, let's be kind to a brand new baby, as you described, the one who's still snoozing a lot in those first few days home from the hospital or just getting settled in. I also think if a family is figuring out feeding, if mom is nursing, baby needs some time to learn breastfeeding. Like that's a learning curve and it's sometimes a steep one. So certainly we want to leave those precious early days alone. But I've had clients who even start when a baby is a week to 10 days old and do just fine. And then they've prevented those issues that crop up for the families who waited and now their baby's 5 months old and only sleeps laying in their lap while they're sitting up or something bizarre, So there's really not the harm in starting early that some people think exists.
Okay, so I want to talk about all of that, and we're going to do that as we continue here on Chris Fabry Live with Dina Thayer. We're going to talk about the crib. We're going to talk about that issue of bringing the baby in the bed, for nighttime feedings, and then the baby stays there. I know Dina has an opinion about that. If you go to chrisfabrylive.org, we have a link to the article that we're featuring today, Infant Sleep, Laying the Foundation from Focus on the Family. And we have some other links there too. And I want to say especially a big thank you to those of you who do not have infants. That's in the rear view mirror, but you have supported this program. Thank you for doing that today so that somebody who is in this situation is going to be helped by what we're talking about here with Dina Thayer. Again, the website is chrisfabrylive.org, and you can see right there how you can support us. Just go to chrisfabrylive.org. More straight ahead on Moody Radio. This is Chris Fabry Live on Moody Radio, and we are talking about infant sleep today with Doula Dina. Don't call us. Our program is recorded. But if this is what you're hearing at night, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. If that's the sound of the voice that you're hearing at night, today's program, I hope, is a breath of fresh air to you or somebody you know who's in that situation. Our first call in this segment is from Jeff in Akron, Ohio.
I had a question about REM sleep cycles, and if Dina's done any digging in that or incorporate that into her, advice and counseling on the subject.
Good question.
I learned,
and that's where you're really in that deep sleep, right, Jeff?
Well, yeah, and what I learned was that you go through these cycles. It takes about 90 minutes, approximately. So when my daughter was born, I started planning on her sleep patterns to frame those increments, like 3 hours, 4.5, 6, 7.5, all the way to 12. Just in those, made sure it was divisible by 90 minutes, and it seemed to she would wake up. I would expect her to wake up around a certain time. She would wake up around that certain time, and it just kind of seemed like it fit together.
So it worked. It worked for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
I think Jeff has gotten some kind of sneak peek into my infant sleep consulting toolkit here, because this is fascinating. When I have those families where the routine element does resonate with them, this is exactly what I recommend. And for that reason, so that you can get all elements of the full sleep cycle. So as I said, it's not for everyone, but for families who are like, hey, we're up for a schedule, we're up for some routine because we just need to sleep. I often recommend starting with a 3-hour cycle that includes a feeding at the very beginning of the cycle, then a wake time, and then a nap. It spells FAN because most families are a fan of it. So you do the feeding at the front end, say we're going to go a 7-10-1 schedule. So 7 a.m. feeding, then some awake time. Then the nap would be 8:30 a.m. and go till 10 a.m. and then rinse and repeat like the back of a shampoo bottle. So Jeff is absolutely onto something. That is a routine that babies can fall into quite beautifully. And then just as they get older, you can kind of stretch that out. So often around 4 months, because I call it the rule of fours, at about 4 months, you can go to about 4 hours. And I always encourage families, you want the awake time and the sleep time to be about equal. So in a 3-hour cycle, you have 90 minutes awake, 90 minutes a nap. In a 4-hour cycle, it's 2 hours awake, 2 hours of nap. So he's absolutely right. And for families who are kind of paying attention to, hey, we want them to get into that restorative sleep and not just take a bunch of cat naps, then that piece can be really helpful.
So do you intentionally, say in the morning, afternoon, sun's really, really up, do you intentionally keep the baby awake for that hour and a half or 2 hours? You wouldn't let him listen to our program because they go to sleep. but do you intentionally, stimulate, keep the baby stimulated?
It's a yes, but, Chris. So here's what I would say. Babies are all different, like we've talked about. And so the short answer is yes, if they can tolerate it. So sometimes a newer baby really can't go the distance. They just don't have an hour and a half of wake time in them yet because they're teeny. And so you keep them awake until you're maybe seeing those sleep signals. Maybe they're rubbing their eyes or getting a little overstimulated or just a little cranky, a little fussy. You don't want to wait until it's full blown over the top because then you've often missed the window, so to speak. So I encourage families, hey, if it hasn't quite been 90 minutes, but you're seeing those tired cues, just do the nap. Don't set yourself up for a disaster because what we do know is also a tired baby, it's so counterintuitive, but they actually fight sleep harder. So any parent who's tried this will be nodding right now as they're listening, who said, I think I'm going to try and keep my baby up later tonight so they'll sleep in the morning.
Right.
Absolutely. It's a dumpster fire. It will completely backfire. And what we know,
fear will not be something you want to go into.
No, I'll want to get in my bubble and get away from the crying baby is what will happen. So it's an interesting, and again, it seems counterintuitive, but sleep begets sleep. And I tell my clients this all the time. A well-rested baby actually sleeps better. So you want to be encouraging the sleep and not fighting it. But yes, once they're able to tolerate the 90 minutes awake, then yes, that's why the awake time happens after the feeding. You can maybe do burping, a diaper change, maybe go for a walk. Maybe they do their little bath, have some tummy time. You find those little awake time activities to get them until that nap time.
Bob is in Denver, Colorado. Bob, why'd you call today?
Well, thanks for having me, Chris. I was listening online, and I've enjoyed the conversation with Dr. Thayer. And I haven't heard everything, so maybe you've covered what I wanted to ask. But my wife and I disagree on, whether to let him cry or she can't tolerate it. She wants to pick him up, walk with him till he goes to sleep, or rock him. And my mom always said, you let them cry themselves to sleep, and that's better training. So that's my first question.
Okay, wait. Let me stop you. Tell me first, who is him? What is his name?
Our son, who is Josh.
Josh. Okay. And how old is Josh?
Josh is 4 months.
4 months. Okay. Perfect. Okay. And then your second question was?
Well, I've also heard about sleep training, which I haven't looked it up. I don't really understand it, but I'm curious when you should begin that. And are we too early or too late?
Great. You are just the person, because I was going to tell this story,
yes,
Bob,
Chris,
about
this is perfect.
My wife and me, a long time, 40 years ago. But you're doing exactly the same thing. So address Bob, and then I'll tell my story, Dee.
Yes. So I know parents often don't see this the same way. And this also is why setting the intention is so important, or picking your framework. Because what I've found is when I do an intake call with a sleep client, I often start with asking them, what is your tolerance for crying? And what I find is it's often different. So maybe the husband is like, hey, it doesn't really bother me the same way. I can go maybe 20 minutes before I want to pull my hair out. And the mom is saying, I can only last about 3 minutes. And to be fair, sometimes it's vice versa. Sometimes the mom is a toughie and she can go a long time and the dad can't. But it's really worth talking about that first, because there's kind of this challenge that comes up if you're going to bump into each other and have a difficulty where one of you wants to go and, quote, kind of rescue the baby, pick him up, et cetera. And one of you is like, we've got to stay the course here. So my suggestion is talk about those crying tolerances first. See if you can come into alignment. Maybe one of you needs to come a little bit toward each other and you've got to meet in the middle a little. The one who's more uncomfortable maybe needs to wait a little longer. The one who's more comfortable maybe needs to be okay going in a little sooner. But another thing that can be really helpful is just to kind of set some time frames. Maybe you say, okay, we're going to set a timer and we're going to try and let them work it out for 5 minutes. And then if it's not working out, we'll go check on them, pat their back, talk to them, but not pick them up. I usually recommend, if you are slowly working on sleep training, not to pick them up, because then when you set them down, guess what? You just started back over at minute 0. So talking together about crying tolerance is big, and then talking about maybe some incremental time frames. After 5 minutes, maybe you set the timer for 8. I also want to say here that many parents don't understand that for a lot of babies, crying is actually part of their self-soothing routine. It's part of what they do to fall asleep. And so if we short circuit that, sometimes we're actually doing them a disservice, even if we think we're going in to comfort them. One delightful example, I had a mom who her personal tolerance was 10 minutes. So she was always going in after 10 minutes. I met with her and said, today I'm going to sit with you because I know it's uncomfortable for you to hear your son cry. And let's just push that envelope a little bit. This little buddy fell asleep after 11 minutes and did that until he turned 2. So his personal sleep cycle was, I need to cry for 11 minutes and then I'm out. And she just had never gotten there. So it's really fascinating. But I also want to hear your story, Chris. So you go ahead.
Well, yeah, let me get back to Bob before I tell you my story, because it's going to take about an hour to get this. So, Bob, does that help for you and your wife, do you think?
Extremely, because her tolerance is less than 10 minutes. So I will relate that story. Plus, we're going to talk about, I need to compromise some. So, and we'll leave my mother's beliefs out of this and find what works for us. But I love the 10 and 11 minute story about when you sat with that mother. So that's great insight. Is there a time where it's too late to start sleep training?
That is such a good question. And it sounds like you kind of hopped on maybe midstream, and we did talk a little bit about there's not really a too soon, and some parents think that. But I also love this question because there's really not a too late either. I feel like if there's listeners here who maybe think, oh, the ship has sailed, I've missed the boat, you might have fallen into some tricky sleep habits. But the truth is, even if you have some less than desirable things going on, please don't panic. It's rarely too late to make some meaningful course corrections and get back on track.
Yes. So you're saying there's hope.
Yes.
That's what you're saying. You're
Absolutely.
saying there's hope. Okay, so let me take our final break, and then when we come back, I'll tell you all that happened. Bob, God bless you, friend. Thank you for calling about it. And Josh, give him a big hug for us, and I hope he sleeps through the night real, real soon. I'll tell you what happened to the wife of my youth and myself and the conflict we had. It's actually the opposite of what Bob just talked about. We'll do that straight ahead on Chris Fabry Live. This program has gone so quickly. If you know somebody who has an infant in the home and they're struggling with this, make sure you tell them you listen to the podcast with Dina Thayer here on Chris Fabry Live, and send them to the website, chrisfabrylive.org, because that article from Focus on the Family, Infant Sleep Laying the Foundation, we have that linked as well at chrisfabrylive.org. Okay, so it was 40 years ago. We brought this little bundle of joy home. She was born in March. So it was probably sometime around April or May that my wife made the decision, we're going to let her cry, like you were talking about a little earlier. We're going to let her cry a longer time. Not all the way through the night, but we're going to let her cry extended period of time. We lived in a studio apartment. So it's a studio on the corner and then one bedroom next to it, one bedroom on the other side in Chicago. And so part of me was, they're going to kick us out of here. It's like a dog that barks all day long. They're going to kick us out of here if they got a baby that's crying in the middle of the night. And we happen to know the person who lived right next door, and she said, don't worry about it. My bedroom's on the other side. So that should have allayed my fears. But every time our firstborn would cry, I would think, she's dying in there. You've got to pick her up. What are you doing? And my wife kept saying, look, here's, and she told me the same thing that you were saying, Dina. It's like she's calmed my fears down. She's not going to die. This is part of the process. We can do, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Let's just see what happens here. And I can remember the night that, my in-laws gave me this headset. It was the best Panasonic earphones that I ever had that were the stereo. And so I put them on and I turned it up loud and I got in the chair near, as far away as I could get, but it's a studio apartment. Where are you going to go? And I turned the earphones up and I just steamed. It's like, this baby is going to die, and she doesn't care about the baby, and I care about the baby. And go ahead, Ryan, play the. So here's what I heard. I heard the baby, and I'm listening to the music. We built this city, or something like that. And pretty soon, things start to, and she settles down, and she goes to sleep. And it was like, who is this that I've married? How did she know that happened? And it did. And it was like, why don't I trust her more with these things? But it hit the nerve of me as a protective dad. It's like, I don't want my children to suffer, number one. And then I realized, wait a minute, that's really not it. It's not that I don't want my children to suffer. It's that I don't want to suffer. I don't want to go through, this hard part to get to the better part. It's more about me that was kind of mixed in there as well. And maybe I'm being too hard on myself. Dina, what do you think?
I think you're being fairly accurate, but it's actually really good self-awareness too, because I don't know that parents always see the selfishness in it. There is a piece where we want to be comfortable and we don't want to listen to it. And even physiologically, I won't go into all the chemistry and hormones and all the things that happen, but we are actually wired to be uniquely distressed by our own baby crying. So moms often can hear other babies cry. It does not impact them the same way as their own baby. So you as a dad being so dialed in to your daughter being upset, that's actually really normal. It's part of how God designed us, and it's a good thing so that we'll be responsive to our children and not neglect them and ignore them. But where your wife also was correct is that sometimes we need to flip the switch. I talk about being a needs-based parent. And instead of having the goal of how we approach crying being to stop the crying, the goal becomes, how do I meet the need the cry is telling me about? And if you're hearing a tired cry, the need is sleep. So the best thing you can do is continue to maybe wait, maybe push pause, see if they can work it out and get some sleep.
And you're loving the child all through that, while you're also taking care of your own needs. Let's say there are two parents and they both have, schedules that they need to, be awake in the day, and they can't both stay up all night long. What do you suggest? Does one get a hotel room someplace to get some sleep?
Yeah, and your situation in a studio is not uncommon. I've had families in a studio apartment, and that's especially tricky. You really can't escape it.
Right.
For lack of a better word. And so often they will be the ones who are ready to try some gentle routine, because that schedule often helps the sleeping at night. If we clean up the daytime routine, we often see the night follow suit. So some clients are confused. They're like, why aren't you helping me with the night? I'm like, let me help you with the day and watch what happens. So that's really key. But yeah, you might need a break, or you might choose to say, hey, we both work, so we need to start this on a weekend where we can have a couple of really tired days that aren't going to mess us up because we're not getting up early or what have you.
What about the sleep space? Talk about the crib.
Yes, the crib is an important thing. I'm a big fan of babies having their own sleep space. Now, certainly when a baby is tiny and if a mom is nursing, or even if you're bottle feeding in the night, it's nice to have baby close by. So you might want to choose a bassinet in your room, in the master bedroom, whatever that setup is. But really what we're seeing is the recommendations really are that babies have their own sleep space. A lot of us have heard of the ABCs of safe sleep, so that baby is A, alone, B, on their back, and C, in a crib or bassinet separate from being in the parent's bed. And that's just the science, even for preventing things like SIDS. Now, as I said before, just like one parenting or sleep style is not one size fits all, neither is this. And you might have extenuating circumstances. For instance, I had a baby with reflux. Hearing him choke on his own spit up was terrifying for me when he was on his back. So I actually raised the head of his bassinet, stuck a phone book under it. I'm dating myself here. We had phone books back in the day, kids. Put a phone book under it, and he did sleep on his tummy, but it was again, mitigating the other health challenge we had going on with the reflux. So you might have to make some tweaks that make you comfortable for your own baby's safety. But in general, Having them in their own space is great. And this is another one where the earlier you start that, the better it goes. If they've been in your bed for a while and now you suddenly try to pop them in the nursery, they're probably going to have an opinion about that. And it's going to sound like that sound effect Ryan's been using.
Yeah. Okay, Ryan, play it again. We got to hear that one more time before we end here. Is there a correlation, I just thought of this, between the sleep plan that you're talking about and then later on potty training? Do you see any similarities there?
I mostly see that it's the similarities with the parents, that if they're the structure people, they'll often also approach potty training with structure. And the families who are more free form about sleep are also the ones who are like, they'll figure it out eventually. And they'll be potty trained by the time they go to kindergarten. It'll be fine. So a lot of it is more the parenting style than does sleeping well always correlate to potty training. Sometimes it does, but I don't think you can maybe draw a dotted line, not a solid line to that.
Yes. And with 5 children, you said you have 5 children. We had 9. It was very much the first one was like, what do we do here? And we've got all these questions. And by the 9th one, it's like, by the time he gets to college, he'll figure it out.
Yes. You calm down a lot, right? The rough edges get sanded off.
Well, and that's why I love the doula or the friend, who has some children and has some years under their belt to come alongside and just give that comfort. It's going to be okay. You're going to figure this out. The child's going to figure it out. This has been so good, Dina. Thank you for coming alongside us today. Any final words of encouragement for our friends?
I would just say hang in there. It really is worth it. And most babies do figure it out. So hang in there, keep your patients on board, and you'll get there.
Yeah, and I hope you get some sleep, even tonight, especially with Josh that we were hearing about. Dina, God bless you, friend. Thanks for coming alongside us today.
Thanks for having me.
If you go to chrisfabrylive.org, you will see a link to that article we've been talking about from Focus on the Family, written by Dina, Infant Sleep, Laying the Foundation. Just go to chrisfabrylive.org. You'll see all the links right there. Reach out to us on Facebook, send an email, respond to the program today if it was helpful to you, and don't you dare miss tomorrow. We have another Best Of broadcast with this question. What if the key to a meaningful life is not in finding all the answers, but what if it's in asking better questions? This conversation from last October, I think, is going to be a game changer for you. It was for me. And we'll do it right here tomorrow on Chris Fabry Live, a production of Moody Radio, a ministry of Moody Bible Institute.